Hello and welcome in. It is game week. It's Thursday night. You know what we do on Thursday nights if you're a Georgia Tech fan. We preview what is going to be a big matchup. We preview what is going to be a monumental game for Brent Key and this Georgia Tech staff. All that and more on tonight's episode of Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Grata Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Welcome in, Georgia Tech fans. We're rocking and rolling here on a Thursday evening. We're letting you pile on in because the Crowded Booth's coming on. This is Swarm Talk, the all things Georgia Tech show here on your interwebs, and we appreciate you tuning in here on October the 17th, 2024. My name is Bryce Koon, the host of, and really the content creator for all things Georgia Tech with the Crowded Booth. This is a big one. This is a game where you have a lot to play for. This is a game where you have, in my opinion, for lack of better words, you have a chance to prove something. We're going to talk a lot of different factors. We're going to talk about what concerns me the most. We're going to talk about the Haynes King situation and what that could look like on Saturday. And we're going to talk about the view of this program, win or lose, on Saturday, because it's a 5-2 team. And there was some news obviously came out. We talked about it on our live college football show last night that really kind of it is what it is. We had Palmer Thoms on. He talked about it from the Georgia perspective, moving the game, and just kind of got me thinking about what is Georgia Tech as a program and what are they in terms of viewing what they need to do. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We already got some comments in the section over there on YouTube. Ultima says, appreciate you tuning in, Ultima. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and LSU should only play night games when they are at home. Great atmospheres to see. I actually agree with this. I think those are three programs that need to play night games. The skyline in Atlanta, Virginia Tech, and just the aura that you have up there in Blacksburg. And then LSU. I mean, it's the best place to play in college football if you're a home team. Jonesy says VT's looking good for those who think Tech will just roll them. I'm going to make people mad 4 minutes into the show. I don't know outside of VMI who Tech should roll. I mean, just don't think this is a team that is going to roll anybody. I mean, I don't see that. I don't see that. And you can beat them, should beat them probably, but rolling is a word that it does not come, and it's not in my vocabulary when it talks about the Georgia Tech team right now, but it is what it is. Hey, if you haven't already, check out the Behind Enemy Lines podcast episode that we did with Irish Breakdown. It was a fantastic episode, already over 2,000 views. It's great. It was great. We really enjoyed it. Fantastic episode. You can go check that out on the channel. And if you want to tune in to that, we typically kind of record those on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when we bring it out. Big question for the chat tonight, though. Before we get started, question for the chat. It's getting cold. It's getting a little cold down here in Baton Rouge, and I heard it was chilly in parts of Atlanta. Chili was on the menu tonight for my wife as we cooked up a pot of chili, really good. You know, it was like 40 degrees when we woke up this morning, into the high 50s. This, to me, chilly weather. The question I have is beans or no beans? Where are you sitting with that? Is it beans or is it no beans in your chili? And let me know in the comments section. All right, let's talk about this football game. What does it mean? Georgia Tech is going to be playing Notre Dame inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday. Obviously, some of the biggest question marks are going to be, is Haynes King going to play this game? We saw Brent Key was posed the question on during his radio show today live on campus, and it was posed in a way and in Brent Key fashion, to the absolute most literal sense. Brent Key says, no, Haynes King will not be playing tomorrow because tomorrow is Friday. And shame on that student for not asking the question the appropriate way. But the question is Haynes King going to play? And I thought there's some people who could care less about my opinion. There's some people who told me this week that I couldn't name more than 5 Georgia Tech players. But I thought, I said, you know what? There's people that want to hear the opinion that I have. So let's get to it. What is the status of Haynes King heading into this game? Look, we saw this was a guy who was battling injuries last week against North Carolina. I do echo the sentiment that the game probably would have not had to come down to what it did last week in Chapel Hill if Haynes King was healthy. Agree with that. I told you last week I think Georgia Tech was the better team. I picked them to cover as my best bet of the week, and they not only covered, but obviously it took the big play at the end for them to be able to win that football game. You know, so coming into this week, we knew Haynes was going to be banged up. The question was to what extent. Now, as Georgia Tech does, and as Brent Key does, and as certain people in the GTAA do, you keep a ton of stuff under wraps. And I just want to tell people, because we had this question floating around our Discord, Bryce, is that normal? Is the level of just hush hush normal? And I would say this: it's not irregular. This is not something out of the norm that Brent Key is doing in terms of keeping things hush hush, keeping things close to the vest. There are tendencies that this athletic administration tends to utilize that are not, and it's not my opinion, it's just straight fact, that are not in the best interest of coverage of a program. But it's what they've done. And so the word on Haynes King is day to day. We'll see. Now, there's been questions. Has he practiced? I will tell you from talking with people and from what I am led to believe as we talk here on Thursday night, Haynes King has practiced. Has he been a full participant? I do not believe so. Has Haynes King been able to participate in every single opportunity that they've had in terms of when the quarterbacks are being utilized? I do not believe so. Is Haynes King going to be 100% on Saturday? I do not believe so. Is Haynes King going to be 80% on Saturday? I do not believe so. Is Haynes King going to play on Saturday? That's the big kicker, because a lot of what this game and how you frame the conversation around this game comes down to who's going to be under center. And so I sit here on Thursday night. It would not shock me to see Zack Pyron be the starting quarterback on Saturday. I do believe that there's a sense of gamemanship happening here with Haynes King, his status not being fully revealed, and he's not going to play at all. I think that this is part of the thing. I do believe that Zack Pyron is going to be the guy. I also will say this, from what I have been, clued in on, there could be an opportunity for Aaron Philo to see some action on Saturday if Haynes King is indeed ruled fully out of the game. And so that's my take on it. That's about as much as I can say on the subject, because it's just such a staunch militaristic rule over there in Atlanta, in the Midtown area. And so that is what it is. That is what it is. I mean, I don't think Haynes King is 100%. I don't think that he's going to be able to be typically effective. And it can have, in my opinion, it can have the effect of, do you go with a 70 to 60% Haynes King, or do you go with 100% Zack Pyron? Now, people can debate that till they're blue in the face. This is not a conference game. I know it's a big game, but it's not a conference game. And there's an outside shot. You could still go to Charlotte. You got to play who's healthy and who's ready to go. And that's just my take on it. But if Georgia Tech does not have Haynes King, what does this game look like? So we're going to play that scenario out. We're just going to project and say, if number 10's not taking snaps for this team, once again, I'm not saying that he's not going to, but I'm giving you both sides of the coin, because we know what we're going to see out of this group if he is. We're going to see a dynamic quarterback who's had to shoulder a lot of the load of this offense at times, who can pair well with Jamal Haynes. We know what that could look like. Notre Dame's got a good defense, regardless of Benjamin Morrison being out or not. But if he doesn't play, we've seen in spurts what Zack Pyron provides. Zack Pyron isn't the runner to an extent that Haynes King is in terms of agility and elusiveness. He has the ability to run the football. He can be mobile. He's not a statue in the pocket by any means. But I think also, too, you have to be realistic about the fact that you got to throw the ball with him. And I think there's been this situation where people have just sat there and said, well, you know what? By God, 2 years ago up in Blacksburg, he was good. Folks, that was 2 years ago. We don't have a legitimate sample size against a real opponent to go off of in Zack Pyron's development. So it's really for anyone, media, the broadcast team on Saturday, for fans, you don't know. That's not me saying that he can't do it. I think that he can. I think he's capable of playing, ACC level football in this game. But we don't know. Like, nobody knows. There's no way to know that unless you are at practice for the full duration. So really, if you're on staff here or you're in the locker room, that's the only way to have a real read on what Zack Pyron could do. So when you look at this game, when you look at some of the things that are going to happen, some of the keys that are going to happen, and one of them is going to be able to sustain drives. Zack Pyron has a tall task in front of him if he is indeed the starting quarterback on Saturday. Now, once again, we're playing in the hypothetical world that Zack Pyron is the starting quarterback. So we're going to stay there for a second. So hear that, listen to that, and apply that as we have this conversation. But if you go with Pyron in this, you've got an opportunity to, in my opinion, to see what you have for the future. If you have to let him play through this offense. Worst case scenario, and Dylan says it right here, if Pyron starts, then my fear would be that the play calling will be super conservative running until we have to throw because we're getting blown out. Or, and Dylan, to your point here, or you are relying so much on the run to where I think you can run the ball on this team, on Notre Dame, because you have talent. But I've said this week in and week out. I don't think it's a smart idea to just keep saying, well, this is what we're going to do, and by God, we're going to do it, and we're going to go down with the ship. That's kind of the feeling I have with this run game. Now, it's worked, but what happens when it doesn't? And in this game, what happens if it doesn't work to the tune of way you want it to, and that if you don't have Haynes King that you need it to, what happens? Do you trust Zack Pyron to run the full scope of Buster Faulkner's offense? That's going to be the big question that we're going to know within the first 2 to 3 drives of this football game offensively for Georgia Tech. Because we can talk about all the different parameters. Yeah, well, Benjamin Morrison's out of the game. Yeah, no, I mean, yes. But they still have talent defensively. They still are pretty staunch up front. They're going to be a physical football team. It reminds me a lot of games where you have played against Clemson last year. Not in terms of the outcome, but I'm just saying where it's a physical football game. And your offensive line is really going to be – your offensive line is going to have a test here because this is probably going to be – Duke was good. This is probably going to be the best defensive front depth-wise that you might face up until this point of the season. And so Notre Dame is, they're like I said, they're physical up front. They don't let up a lot up front. They have really gotten better since that loss to Northern Illinois. They have evolved, much like Georgia Tech has evolved over the past couple of weeks. So you have to let Zack Pyron play with the full scope of the offense. I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to do that. And here's the thing. If we get into Saturday and it's super uber conservative and you're running the football, and look, I'll say this. We know the difference, and everyone knows, because don't let people try to tell you that you're a moron and you don't understand football. Sometimes people talk and it's very apparent they don't understand football. What, Ralph, what do we say? Or I said, Will, what do we say? You just don't know ball. Like that's what we can see. We're going to be able to tell the difference between easing him in to a high profile matchup and just being super conservative and not trusting him. Like, you're going to be able to tell that fairly quickly. You're going to be able to understand, okay, they don't trust him at all. Now, we will see. We'll see what his decision making is. Obviously, like I said earlier, nobody knows outside of the players in the locker room and that staff. Not one media member, not one fan, not one diehard donor can actually tell you what Zack Pyron is going to be on the field on Saturday. They might have an educated guess and they might get it right. We don't know. That's why I'm not going to make an opinion on how I think Zack Pyron is going to play because nobody knows. I think he's capable of doing some really good things for you, but it's also going to depend on if you allow him and let him take the reins of this offense. Because what has been talked about for the past now 2 seasons, season and a half. Wow, Georgia Tech's got a great quarterback situation. That's what the fan base has been saying because you've got a guy who has won you some games, who's young and still developing, and you got a veteran quarterback coming in who has popped off for you and been one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. So you had a situation where Pyron has elected to stay. In this type of situation, let's go back because I want to hold everybody accountable to this. People have talked about it, and we have sat on this show and we've seen the comments, we've seen the social media stuff about it. Like, you know what? If Haynes King goes down, I'm so glad we got Zack Pyron as our backup quarterback. And I'm with you. Like, it's an advantageous situation to be in with him at quarterback because you have a guy. It's not an Aaron Philo or Graham Knowles. Nothing against those guys. They just haven't played meaningful college football at this point. Zack Pyron has, and he's played high stress moments. So that's a calling card that not a lot of teams have in today's day and age of NIL and transfer portal. But if you don't give him the reins, then it completely negates any of the experience that he has and that he could utilize in this football game. If it's going to be run the ball 3 times, run some zone reads and stuff like that, and you're really not going to allow him to flesh out this offensive game plan, saying that they're not going to, I'm just giving you this scenario. If that's what's going to happen, well, it's a disservice to him. It's a disservice to this offense. And really, it's almost like punting this game altogether because you're playing to win. And I was telling somebody this earlier. Brent Key, look, regardless of what you think about Brent Key, the guy is ravenous about winning. He cares about winning. I don't see a scenario where you don't say, we got to unleash everything. And someone mentioned this to me. It's pre-Buster Faulkner. It's in the Brent Key era as the interim head coach. They said, could you see something like they did with Zach Gibson and Tyson Pumachan against Georgia 2 years ago? Go back and watch that game. They get super creative. They're drawing up certain types of trick plays. They're drawing up, having to get very, very creative in what they want to do offensively. And for lack of better words, is that going to be what we see? Like, are you going to have to do some gimmicky type of stuff to win a football game? I would hope not. And look, I know people can't stand this guy in the comments section, but he goes, if the second string, and that's what he was trying to say, if the second string isn't prepared to run the whole offense, that's a coaching fail. I mean, there's no good in having a quarterback who has experience if he can't run the offense and you don't trust him. He shouldn't be on the roster. Like, that's just that's malpractice by the staff and allowing that kid to be a part of the program. Not because he's not good enough, because you're not allowing him to have the tools to succeed and do things. I'm not saying that's going to happen. But if we come out the other side of this game on Saturday and I hop on this live stream and it's uber conservative, it's a blowout loss, that's going to be the complaint is, well, and it shouldn't be, well, if Haynes King would have won, would have played, have been different. Maybe. But why would you boast quarterback depth if you're not really going to allow it to happen? And you're not going to allow that to be a strength and an advantage that you might have over other teams when they put their backup in. Makes no sense to me. So that's kind of the thought process. And obviously, for a lot of people that you get in this game is who's under center is going to determine a lot of things. And I do agree. I think Jamal Haynes, there's going to be a heavy load on him and Chad Alexander. But in all seriousness, when we get out there on Saturday, if it's Haynes King even at 70, 80%, you got to be balanced. And you have to get Eric Singleton and you have to get Malik Rutherford involved somehow very early on in this football game. That's kind of one of the keys to the game for me. You've got to strike first in this game. Notre Dame is one of those teams to me. They're very physical. They are very well coached by Marcus Freeman. You can make jokes about Marcus Freeman. And look, people are going to do this because they did it with Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. He couldn't win the big game. The dude's one of the most successful college football coaches of all time in terms of consistency and winning. Marcus Freeman, I can't tell you if he's going to win a national championship, but that team's going to hover around the 8 to 10 to maybe 11 win mark every single year. And in terms of being able to do that over a long period of time, continuity, that's really good. We've moved the benchmark on what a good team, a good player, and a good coach is. So Marcus Freeman's a good college football coach. They slipped up. They've continued to evolve. They've continued to develop. But I think that you have to strike first. You have to gain the momentum first. Because what you can't do is you cannot go 3 and out offensively, give the raw ball right back to them. And they've got a 3-headed monster in their backfield where, excuse me, we talked about this in the Behind Enemy Lines episode, but you have Jeremiah Love, who's a very physical back. He's averaging 6.8 yards per carry. Riley Leonard has run for 405 yards. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. And Jadarian Price, who's got 41 carries of the season, he's averaging 6.3. So these aren't guys with like 3 or 4, they've got 17 carries and they've blown off one big run. No, the guys I just listed off, Jeremiah Love, 63 carries, he averages 6.8 a pop. Riley Leonard, 65 carries, he averages 6.2 a pop. Jadarian Price, he's got 41 carries, he averages 6.3 a pop. To between those 3 guys, Notre Dame has 17 rushing touchdowns just between those 3 guys. They obviously have 19 outside of that. Now, also, look, here's another fun fact. If you don't start off well offensively, if you struggle, it's not just the Notre Dame run game that's going to kill you. Where has Georgia Tech struggled the most in terms of defense? Anybody want to answer that? I'll give you a second to answer the question. 1, the middle of the field in the passing game. We have completely identified it. Even when everyone's healthy, Kyle McCord tore you up in that Syracuse game with that. Riley Leonard is a good quarterback. He might not be, on top of the draft list. He's not going to be in the Maxwell Award running maybe, but this kid is a solid football player. He's a veteran. He understands the game. And the comfortability level between Leonard and his new OC, Mike Denbrock. I mean, Mike Denbrock has had to tailor his playbook towards what Leonard is. And it's not as mobile as what Denbrock had last year. And if you know ball, you know who I'm talking about, the Heisman Trophy winner. But it's shades of some of being able to be mobile with a passing game that's continuing to grow. I mean, you've got a guy in Riley Leonard. Let's kind of read off some of the stats. He's thrown for 979, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's been trying to get his feet wet in this offense. But you go back to some of the more recent contests. He had 229 on 22 attempts, 16 completed against Stanford with 3 touchdowns and an interception. No interceptions. He's coming off his best performance against Stanford. Against Louisville, he was 17 of 23, very efficient in that game, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he threw for 163. They're offsetting and they're balanced. They're offsetting the run game. They're passing when necessary. They're able to take advantage when you give them the opportunity. So somebody said right here, Matt says Tech's defense needs to prove they have gotten better at stopping the run. Numbers would tell you that, Matt. I would also ask who has been a good running back that you have faced. Amari and Hampton Hampton had a big game. They've got 3 guys that can run the football. It's not just the 2 running backs, it's the quarterback as well. You have to be prepared and disciplined to stop the run in this football game because Notre Dame's going to run the ball to set up the pass. Shocking concept, right? They're going to do that. You have to stay disciplined. You cannot over pursue in this game. You can't get out of what has made Tyler Santucci and the Georgia Tech defense effective. So it's the run defense, and oddly enough, it's what you're best at versus what Notre Dame's best at. Their best quality on offense is running the football. Your best quality on defense is the run defense. One thing's got to give. Are we going to learn that Notre Dame's been beating up on teams, that maybe aren't as good, and that's why their run game is good? Or are we going to learn that Georgia Tech's strength of schedule is nowhere near what people want to keep claiming that it is to be? And that's the reason that they've been so good. We're going to learn. It's one of the beauties of this game. Week in, week out, you get to learn more and more about your team. But if they get the run going, I do fear because it's going to put this team on their heels defensively in Georgia Tech. It's going to put them on their heels in terms of defending the pass. There's going to be a lot of play action. There's going to be a lot of zone reads. There's going to be a lot of outside zone runs. There's going to be an opportunity for Riley Leonard to hit some passes over the middle and be able to capitalize. We go back to their stats. We talked about rushing. Bo Collins, their leading receiver, 21 catches. That name sounds familiar. Transferred in from Clemson. 266 and a touchdown. He's averaging 12.7 a pop. You want me to go back to that Stanford game? Let's do it, where they won at 49-7. You might say, well, Bryce, Stanford's not any good. Hey, folks, there's still 11 people on the other side of the football field that are trying to do some stuff. Bo Collins, 4 for 85 last week against Stanford, no touchdowns. Chris Mitchell, 4 for 32 with a touchdown. Jeremiah Love, K.K. Smith, Jaden Thomas, Jaden Greathouse, Deion Causey, Pat Coogan, Eli Raridan, Anais Williams, Jadarian Price. You had double-digit receivers that touched the football in that game. Every single player in the backfield, every single guy in the wide receiver room, it feels like touched the ball in that game. They're spreading the ball out. That's something that they want to be able to do. And the tight end room for Notre Dame needs to step up. But it all comes down to you're going to have to force Riley Leonard to throw about 35 to 40 passes in this game to feel good about winning the football game, because it tells you that on first down, they're not able to hand the ball off and get 5-6 yards to set up second and short and then third and short or get a first down. You have to win first downs in this football game. It is imperative if you want to, one, keep your defense off the field and get their offense off the field as well. Wanted to add this in here too. We've talked about, just this Georgia Tech team in terms of what they could be and what this could happen. Look, there's a reason, and Will, I know you're in the background. Someone had messaged me that this line actually went down, and I want to confirm with our partners over at Bet Online about this. The line actually went up. It's Notre Dame minus 12 right now. I think that our friends over at Irish Breakdown talked about this on the podcast very well. They articulated this very well. And I posed the question to Brian because I wanted people to hear it from somebody else that doesn't have a heavy involvement in Georgia Tech like a lot of us do, about what this team is viewed as. And I think he hit the nail on the head when it comes to this defense. They don't have a lot of first-round picks. They don't have a lot of, 5-star guys. But Tyler Santucci has this group believing, they're playing together, and they're scrappy as all get out. They embody what Brent Key is. And so for everything that I have laid out, and even the gut feeling that Notre Dame is going to win this football game, I can't quite sleep on the fact that even without Haynes King, and if he doesn't play in this game, the potential of Haynes King not playing in this football game, you can't count this team out. Not quite yet. There's a lot of things that you could potentially take, in numbers and stats, and you could shove them on a social media post, and someone else could take numbers and stats and put them on a social media post, and in turn, what does it do? Well, it just says a bunch of numbers to prove anything you want. These are not robots, people. The chemistry is real. The buy-in is real. And so for everything that people want you to believe about coming into this game, this is kind of where I get to the pick of the night. For everyone that nationally wants to sit here and say, yep, Notre Dame is going to win this football game, especially now since, it's one of those things where King might not play, and what chance does Georgia Tech really have, and all that kind of stuff. For all the people claiming that and saying that, I just can't quite say with definitive truth that Georgia Tech's not going to win this football game. Despite it all, I just can't quite make myself say that. Now, as I get to the pick here, I'm going to tell you I'm taking Notre Dame to win this football game. 12 points is a lot of points. It obviously hinges a lot, so I'm not going to put any money on this game. I'm not going to tell you to put any money on this game either, but I do think Notre Dame wins this football game. People expecting it to be a blowout, close. I think that this could be within a 10-point game. And so my kind of final in this one is kind of a Notre Dame 31, Georgia Tech 21, or 31-23, something to where it could be a one-score game. It's going to depend on the health of Haynes King. I don't think Notre Dame's offense is overly explosive, but they can grind you down. They can really methodically move down the field. But like I said, if we sit here on Saturday, and I'm just going to say this, if we sit here on Saturday and the headline and the thumbnail read on the show, Georgia Tech shocks Notre Dame in Atlanta, it wouldn't surprise me at this point because of what's happening in college football, but just because of the DNA of this Georgia Tech team under Brent Key. It wouldn't surprise me if I look down at my phone or I'm watching the game and I'm saying, yep, okay, makes sense. It wouldn't. And we get some crazy stat line where Zack Pyron's like 13 of 17 for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's just super efficient. It's not explosive, but they run for, nearly 200. And kind of last thing, Will mentioned this on the show when we talked about Arkansas and a couple other teams. Teams that want to pull you down to where they are and make you have a rock fight. They want to bring you into a rock fight. And I think especially if Haynes King is not playing in this game, that's going to be the attitude for Georgia Tech and Brent Key. Okay, you're Notre Dame, your playoff hopes are still alive. Well, let's bring you down. Since you think you're so high and mighty, let's pull you down to our level that you think you are, and let's make you play our version, our brand of football. I think Notre Dame can withstand that. That's the problem. I think Notre Dame has a chance to play Georgia Tech's game and beat them at their own game. And that's why I'm picking the Irish. Could be a crazy one, though. It could be. Will Mannis is going to be in the building. And good question here. What's a rock fight look like from Georgia Tech? I think it looks the same for anybody. I mean, you go back to the Florida State game, Jack. It's not pretty all the time. It's the death march old Paul Johnson drives where they go 12 plays, 86 yards, and take off 9 minutes off the clock. And they just don't let you have the football. Sustainability on offense is key. Winning first downs is key. And then Jonesy points it out here. They're going to get some turnovers. Momentum plays in that stadium are going to be absolutely massive. It's going to be a fun one. Will Mannis is going to be in the building. 3:30 kickoff. I'll be watching it. We'll be live around 5 or 10 minutes after the game is over. And it's going to be a fun one. Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, and then obviously a little rest, and this team gets to take over the back half of their schedule. We're almost halfway through the slate, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of crazy to think about. Absolutely. It is really crazy to think about. Hey, before we get out of here, you guys have seen me wear this hat, worn it on some of the streams and all that kind of stuff. This hat is actually no longer allowed to be sold. Shout out the GTAA. But I've got my hands on a potential deal for us to get some. So if you want one of these, comment, DM me on social media, email us at thecrowdedbooth@gmail.com. Whatever you want to do. If you want one, they're going to be $30 a piece that you can purchase these hats. They're really awesome. It's a little snapback action, just tech. It's got the state of Georgia and Navy right there. So we got to hit a minimum order. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 24 total hats. I believe, and Maxwell's in the chat. Maxwell, you can let me know. I believe we're like at 9 or 10 people that said yes. I haven't really put it out there, but if you want one, shout it out. Comment down there below after the show. Join the Discord and talk about it. But that's that hat right there. Like I said, it's going to be $30 a piece. And it's going to be, we need 24. Maxwell says we've got 10 in the Discord so far, and Matt says y'all need to get them. Yeah, it's an awesome hat. It's a sick hat. It's not really dry fit material, but it's still lightweight material. It looks good, fits well. I mean, I love this hat. It's awesome. It's a solid hat. So it's the Tech hat. Make sure you check those out. Hey, thanks so much once again. Sponsor of all of our Georgia Tech shows. They do a fantastic job over there. You need to make sure that you check out our really, really good friends at Section 103. You see right there, you got the Haynes King jersey, you've got the Tech hoodie, the Tech like, the North Avenue Trade School, and the patented Brent Key short sleeve cutoff hoodie. Make sure you get those in. It's great stuff. Use code CrowdedBooth for 10% off your first order today. My name is Bryce Koon. This is Swarm Talk, final live show of the week, and then we get to sit down on Saturday, enjoy some football weather, and watch an amazing college football slate that's going to be a lot of fun. Georgia Tech, Notre Dame kicking off at 3:30 Eastern over there in Atlanta inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We'll catch them next time. Can Georgia Tech win? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. We'll talk to you on Monday, Saturday afternoon, sometime. See you later.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.